Astrid awoke with the hot sun beating down on her fair skin. She gazed up into the sky and could see strange birds circling above her, and she shielded her eyes from the glaring sun. It was then that she remembered what had happened. The blow to the head, her shackles, the long wagon ride to God knows where, the sudden ambush, men shouting, being dragged, and again all went black. As she stood up on her faltering legs, she slowly looked around until her eyes rested on Elsa. She went to her side and knelt down beside her. Fearing the worst, she gently nudged her, softly calling her name. Elsa? To her relief, Elsa stirred and moaned, "What happened? Where are we?" "It would appear that we have been betrayed, Elsa, and I do not know where we are or why. We will talk about it later, but for now we must get out of this hot sun and find water." Elsa nodded in agreement and got to her feet. She watched as Astrid gazed over at a large monolith with strange etchings on it. She was strangely attracted to it, so she walked over. And as she did, it began to glow a strange green color. Mesmerized by it, she reached out to touch it. And strangely enough, it spoke.
"Behold, bonded one, the very boundaries of civilization. Beyond the passage of our highways lie the wild places of the world, where untamed savages make endless war upon each other. You cannot pass into the endless wastes enslaved. Your bonding prevents it. Return. Follow the road. Any road. All roads lead to the city."
Astrid stood puzzled, amazed. What trickery was this? Why did it call her the bonded one? Enslaved. She glanced down at her shackles. She returned to Elsa. "Did you hear that?" "Yes, I did, Astrid, and I'm frightened. What is this place?" "I don't know, Elsa, but it says to follow the road. It will lead us to a city." Having been raised in the snow and ice, they had only heard stories of a land far to the south where there was only sand and rocks. As she looked around her, she could see sand for miles, but she could also see what was left of a partially sand-covered road. And as her eyes followed the road up, she could see smoke. Maybe there would be food and shelter there. When they got close, Astrid stopped. She realized that this was the wagon that had brought them here, and she approached more slowly. As she got even closer, she could smell the stench of the rotting bodies. She looked around at the wreckage, and it was even more clearer to her now what had happened. "They're all dead," Astrid said out loud. "Let's check for food and water, Elsa." "It looks like this chest has some food in it, Elsa." "And I have the keys to our shackles," Elsa shouted. Astrid and Elsa helped each other unlock their shackles, and as they dropped to the ground, they noticed they both had a strange bracelet on their left wrist. It was made of gold and intricately carved with an emerald stone inlay. They both checked it over to look for a clasp or some way to remove it. There was none, and it fit so snugly that there was no way they could slip it off their wrist. They looked at each other in puzzlement. These look like some kind of branding, Elsa. Some kind of proof of ownership, like a tattoo. Well, if they are, we belong to someone very wealthy, chuckled Elsa. Maybe we can find someone who knows what they are. Maybe, replied Astrid. Astrid decided to walk to the front of the wagon to see if there was anything else she could find that would be useful, and as she approached, she stopped in horror and gazed up at the skeletal remains, pierced by a pole. The cause of death was clear by the arrows protruding from its body, and the road was lined with them. Fear was beginning to grip Astrid, but she was quickly distracted by a water skin lying on the rock next to her. She grabbed it, and she also noticed a note. Look, Elsa, someone left water and a note. I am beaten, left to rot among the ruins of the past. There are others here, slaves, bandits, and cannibals, exiles from lands I've never heard of. Some of them try to scrape a life from the wasteland, scrabbling in the rocks and sands for their own place. I cannot go on. The life that I left behind haunts me. The sun over the glittering spires of Belveros is forever denied me. The smell of my daughter's hair. I will pass the ghost fence, and this cursed land will finally end me. To whoever reads this note, I leave the last of my water and this message. Stranger, you have my pity. You do not know how truly cursed you are. Astrid and Elsa looked at each other. Slaves? Bandits? Cannibals? Cannibals were the tribes to the south that their parents threatened to sell them to if they were naughty. They feasted on human flesh and were terrifying. They were thought to be made up as a discipline tool. But were they? Gods, what land is this? We need to press forward, Elsa. Let's follow the road. So onward they went in search of shelter, and who knew what else. The further they went, the more Astrid realized that this was the ruins of a once huge highway. Nothing now remained but the whispers of an age long ago. They pressed forward. Elsa, get down, Astrid cried, as a huge strange beast screeched and flew away. What was that? Elsa whispered. Heaven only knows, but it looks like it was more afraid of us, Astrid replied. As she walked closer, she could see a body, stinking of death, and obviously what the creature was after. As she gazed up, she could see the remains of a corpse the creature had dropped in his fright. Looking down, she noticed a journal.
Gods curse this sandstorm. We were forced to take refuge before the wind scoured the skin from our faces. There is something in the storm. Beasts. We hear the skittering of their paws outside the ruins, and their howls mingled with the screaming winds. The men are scared. I've put them to work crafting rudimentary weapons and torches from the loose stones and rough plants that dot this place. I've yet to meet a beast that liked fire, or the bite of the axe.
After reading the note, Astrid realized just how much trouble they were really in. They had nothing to protect themselves. No axe, no sword, nothing except for the clothes on their back and what little food they could find. "We need to find shelter soon, Elsa," Astrid said with a heavy heart. She had only gone a few steps when she saw what looked like trees in the far distance. "Elsa, look!" As she turned the corner, she sighed a sigh of relief. And as she stood at the edge of the sands, she gazed down at the lush green before her. "Come, Elsa," she cried. As soon as she saw them, Astrid crouched down. She crept up to get a closer look. These were such strange beasts. They looked like nothing she had ever seen before. There was no fur, and they didn't seem aggressive or worried about her presence at all. After feeling that they were safe, Astrid felt she could continue their search for shelter. Still not trusting these creatures too much, she stayed well out of their way. As Astrid stepped into the clearing, she could see more of the creatures, and off in the distance 2 huge statues. But more importantly, she could see water. Throwing caution to the wind, Astrid ran headlong to the water, with Elsa close behind. She ran headlong into the water, feeling the coolness against her skin. "Come on in, Elsa. The water is glorious." She dove down. The colorful fish and coral captivated her. When Astrid rose to the surface, she glanced around. And to her surprise, she could see a campfire off in the distance to her right, and what looked like a single person standing there. She quickly swam back to Elsa. There's a camp just over there, Elsa. Let's go check it out. Follow me. When she got closer, Astrid crouched down and approached slowly. Stay hidden, Elsa, until I make sure it's okay, she warned. As she crept closer, she could see the man was alone and seemed friendly, so she approached him. He immediately struck up a conversation.
Another new one, eh? I can smell it on you. Veterans tend to smell just a little more like despair. I'm Arcos. Once a sailor, now a wanderer. You didn't think you were the only one, did you? You should go up north. There's whole cities of exiles up there. In the beginning, there were only a few of us. But now, it seems like fresh-faced fools are showing up every week. Not all of them are as friendly as I am, Reggie. Watch your step. There's a lot of desperate people out there.
Can you tell us anything about the bracelets? We can't get them off.
Bracelets? You can't remove them. Saw one fool cut his arm clean off trying to get rid of it. Bled to death right there in the sand. Nasty business. Leave it on. You'll start to hear the voices soon enough. And you'll start seeing the ghosts. I don't think the voices are for us. Not for us here and now. I think they were talking to somebody else. Back then. Wherever it was. Whenever it was. Those pillars keep us confined here. Some call it the curse wall or the ghost fence or just the boundary. Doesn't really matter what it's called, does it? I walked all the way around it once. Had to be careful not to cross it, of course. Once in the north, I saw a few people on the other side. Wearing bracelets just like ours, with gems of amber. Makes you wonder. I'm no scholar, but I've met a few who passed through. We all have mad theories about what the ruins scattered around here are. Murians, giant kings, Kari, Pelusian serpent men. Do those names mean anything to you? Never mind. It's my experience that many other minds in the past get eaten by crocodiles in the present.
Arcos had so much information to give her, and she had needed time to process it. So before she left, she asked if he would mind if they set up camp near him. Of course not, Exile. And he began to tell them not to harm the creatures called the Shalebacks in his camp. They were friendly, but there were others that were not. The small green ones were not aggressive, but the larger purple and blue ones were, so be careful. There were also a great supply of food and other materials. He also told them about the sandstorms and that they needed to make stone shelter to protect themselves as soon as possible. Astrid thanked him so much, and they were on their way. Weeks went by, and Arcos proved to be an invaluable friend. He helped them with their shelter and stone tools. He showed them how to harvest the aloe plant and make healing potions to heal any wounds much quicker than bandages alone. He told them about the local camps, and if they could overtake them, they might be able to gain some valuable loot. But more so, beware of the cannibals. Yes, they were an unearthly lot, and would love nothing better than to have them for dinner. If you know what I mean, he added, with a serious expression. But Astrid and Elsa were more interested in what he had to say about a city far to the northeast called Seppermuru. There they could purchase armor and weapons to better help them survive this savage land. This excited Astrid and Elsa, and they begged him to tell them more, eager for any information he could give. They would sometimes sit around the campfire for hours, asking questions and sharing stories about their previous lives. Later that night, as Astrid sat there alone, lost in the silence of her thoughts, she hearkened back to the time of their capture. Or was it a case of treachery? No matter. They had been exiled into this land of horrors, but they would survive, and they would build a new life. Whatever that means.